The Pelicans are playing their best basketball of the season right now, and I've got three important trends as to why, including something surprising about Zion Williamson. It's the Monday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Monday after the Pelicans go 2-0 on the weekend, a perfect 3-0 on their road trip. We're going to talk about both of those two games, the win over the 76ers, the win over the Atlanta Hawks in today's show, but we're going to look at it through the larger context of three really important things that you're seeing from this team. We're going to start off with Zion Williamson. We're going to look at Trey Murphy. Then I want to get into Herb Jones as well, because all three of those guys are propelling the Pelicans right now, who are solidly in fifth place in the Western Conference. This episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out over at nissanusa.com. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, available wherever you get your podcasts, and almost 10,000 of y'all on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Subscribe, and of course, become an everydayer. Listen Monday through Friday, or if you listen one day a week, listen 2 days a week. This is going to be a fun end of the Pelicans season. We got a banger of a show coming for y'all tomorrow. I just mentioned that the Pelicans are solidly in fifth in the Western Conference, but could they actually get fourth and get home court advantage in the first round? I think maybe. We'll talk about it in tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans. But after this weekend, the Pelicans look good, right? Again, solidly in the fifth spot here. With this winning streak, with this win over the Atlanta Hawks, they've clinched a road winning record. They have 21 wins on the road. They have 7 more road games. They're 21-13. The worst they can do is 21-20, which they won't. And they have a winning record on the road as a guarantee. They also have the longest winning streak in the Western Conference right now. So this was a very good road trip. Perfect 3-0, even if the win over the Philadelphia 76ers was a bit of a struggle, but we'll touch on that in this segment too. You know, we know the bench has been good, but the starters are trending better. And a big reason why is the play of Zion Williamson. Let's start with the obvious, the thing that you see the most. We don't even need to go into stats in this one, right? Like, he looks absolutely incredible, doesn't he? He just looks really, really good physically out there. I don't want to say he looks like Duke Zion. I don't know if he'll ever look like that again, nor should he necessarily, but he has got some spring and some bounce that we haven't seen in a while. He's physically looking trim, which is a great thing that kind of silences some of the haters up, I think, a little bit. Like Stephen A. Smith looking at him can't really make jokes right now. Neither can Colin Cowherd or some of those guys that are basically just talking out of their rear ends and don't really know what's going on with the team. You know, Kendrick Perkins, for all his faults, seems to really like this team, doesn't think people are talking about him enough, even though we talk about him daily here. You know, and a big reason why, again, is Zion. He looks awesome. He's playing awesome right now. One thing to note, and that you can see this from him, and it's been a little bit up and down because some of these past couple of games for the Pelicans have been blowouts, he's playing more in the first quarter. You know, previously he was checking out after about 6 minutes of play, then gets like a 3-minute break, checks back in with about 3 minutes to go. They've pushed that a little bit longer for certain stints, which if they weren't able to do that because of conditioning, well, shows that he's in good condition if they're doing it now. You know, we'll do a separate show on, is kind of like the player performance and care team the MVP of this franchise right now? And I think you could almost claim that the answer is yes, because they've got Zion in amazing shape in mid-March. That's the biggest thing, right? It's one thing to come into the season looking great, which he admittedly didn't look amazing, but as he's rounded into form here, he looks great. He's getting up, right? He's getting up. He's blocking shots. We'll talk about the defense in a minute because that's the part that I think is most impressive. The defense has been incredible from him over this time. But in general, he looks great, right? In that Philly game, when the game was kind of getting away from him, they had a 30-point lead. It got whittled down to 5 points, I think 3 points, whatever it was that Philly got it close. And honestly, I'm not worried about that. With a 30-point lead, guys tend to relax. And you built that up, you can withstand kind of some runs from them. It's not always going to be pretty, especially on the road in the midst of a road trip. But the fact that you got up 30 means, yeah, you can take your foot off the gas like a little bit. Don't lose the game. They didn't. A little bit more stressful than we would have wanted it to be, but a win's a win on the road anyway, and that was pretty good. Late in the third, parts of the fourth quarter, he took over and just dominated that game. He was great in the win, I thought, over the Philadelphia 76ers. Didn't do it as pretty as we would have liked overall. But for Zion Williamson to go 23 points on 14 shot attempts, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 3 blocks in that game, and was a positive 15, the best by far, the only guy who was positive over the starters, says something about his level of play when he decided to kind of switch it on and just go, okay, I'm going to rescue this team. I'm going to save this team a little bit. The fact that he could do that late in the game speaks to his conditioning. And I think that is what's one of the most impressive things. The defense, though, from Zion Williamson overall as well has been incredible from him. You're seeing just more activity on that side of the ball, more effort on that side of the ball. Right before the end of the first half against the Atlanta Hawks here, when they had DeJounte Murray trying to take a 3 and Zion switched on to him one-on-one, he forced Murray to airball that 3. It was a little rush because time was expiring, but the defense was really good. The lateral side-to-side mobility was incredible from him in that one. But here's the stat that really tells you how well he's playing on defense. Zion Williamson on the season, I don't have the numbers right in front of me. I think he has 32 blocks on the season so far. He has 20 of those blocks in the past 15 games. We just mentioned 3 against the Philadelphia 76ers. Against the Atlanta Hawks, he had 2 blocks as well. And some of these are just kind of the impressive ones. It's not just like you barely get a little bit of touch on the ball. He's jumping, he's making a play, swatting off the glass, getting it from behind, making a play one-on-one with his guy. He has looked really good so far this season with the blocks and everything that he is doing. He has 32 blocks on the season, that's a number, and 20 of them have come in his last 15 games. That tells you what you need to know about Zion. The big knock on him that everyone wants to say, right, is that he doesn't try on the defensive side of the ball. One of the things you worry about with a big offensive threat like that is, can they even give effort on the defensive side of the ball either, because they're using their energy on the offensive side. Well, when you can get both from Zion, and he killed it in the Atlanta game, right? They were throwing a zone. They were trying to do anything, and we'll get more into this when we talk about Trey Murphy in the next segment here. But Zion had 27 points on 14 shot attempts. He's doing it on the offensive side of the ball. He got to the line 10 times, getting hacked, even picked up a deserved tech going at the officials. 7 assists. He was great. He's been great for a while now. This is the Zion that not only have we wanted to see on the defensive side of the ball, but as being a team player on offense too. He's willing to share the ball. You're seeing the excellent vision, the excellent passing. There's a great play that he had when he backed down a smaller defender, kind of posting them up back to the basket, right? And then has the ball, is able to survey the court, sees Najee Marshall cutting down the lane while Zion's trying to double team. Quick dish to him, easy score for Najee. It's this kind of team-oriented style of ball while still dominating on the offensive end and really contributing on the defensive side of the ball too, that should make this team really scary and a team that no one wants to play in the postseason. And also, we're talking about Zion here, but let's not let it be lost that Brandon Ingram, since the All-Star break, has looked is just as good, I think. You're seeing a lot of passing from him. The scoring hasn't been there as much because he doesn't need it. He's being aggressive. He's getting downhill. He's attacking. The Pelicans are pounding the ball into the paint and trying to beat opponents that way, collapse that defense, spray the ball out. You're seeing it from Brandon Ingram. Dude is just slinging passes all over the court, and it's leading to he had 10 assists in this game against Atlanta in the win there, and it's because of his aggressiveness and then other Pelicans making shots too. We'll get into Trey Murphy coming up here. He's also been very good defensively this whole season as well. So the Pelicans just trending up because of that. But another reason why, Trey Murphy looking incredible in multiple areas in ways you don't think. Let's talk about that coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. There's the 2024 Nissan Rogue, perfect for the city drives and great escapes. And with class-exclusive Google built-in, it's your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. And gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store are built right in to the 12.3-inch HD infotainment system. And the 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. There's also the 2024 Nissan Armada. It's going to change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. Tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Nissan Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, the Nissan Armada, and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen. Today and every day, we are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, breaking down everything you want to know about this team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join almost 10,000 of y'all on YouTube as well as we go for a stretch run of the season. Will the Pelicans make top 4? Could they get home court advantage in the first round? It's not outside the realm of possibility. We're going to break down their chances in tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And I've got a couple of really great listener questions that I want to get into. Tomorrow, we're just going to have some fun on the show with a couple of days between games here, which is only a good thing for the Pelicans. Again, we are the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So subscribe in all of those places. And make sure you tune in tomorrow's show. You're not going to want to miss it. Trey Murphy. Whew, dude's back, right? You look for a guy to be good, and it goes beyond the three-point shooting, and I'll explain why in this part of today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. The three-point shooting is back. We've seen that, right? 10 made threes against the Toronto Raptors at the start of this road trip, and he's massive in the win over the Hawks. He had 20 points in the first half of this game. That's huge, right? Like, he's done that multiple times in his career. Particularly doing it off the bench is a pretty incredible thing. So Trey Murphy in the win over the Atlanta Hawks was the leading scorer for the Pelicans, 28 points. He was 6 of 13 from 3, 46.2%. That's great. 10 of 18 overall. That's the kind of impressive thing. He had 4 made shots that weren't threes. The rebounding was good, more on that in a second, was 7 as well. He was dishing the ball a little bit, just playing great basketball. This is really important for this Pelicans team, right? Shooting in general is really important. That's massive for this Pelicans team. We've talked about that all year long, right? But his shooting in particular, I think, is that important. One, it's the deep threes that he takes and makes, the fearlessness of that. But with teams and how they're playing Zion Williamson, they're walling him off. That's what they did in Toronto. It's what they were doing in this game too, even throwing a zone in the mix as well. One of the ways you beat a zone defense is by shooting over it and making your shots. When you have a guy off the bench who can go 6 of 10, that's a really encouraging sign to do that. And this is something that I've long said. If you're an everyday or a long-time listener, I've said, I don't know if there's a player out there that will ever truly space the court for Zion Williamson. Teams are just going to let guys shoot open three-point looks as opposed to putting a guy on there if it means you can put 2 on Zion Williamson. It was super evident, right, in that game against the Toronto Raptors. You build a wall to kind of take away Zion. They're leaving Trey Murphy wide open. Even after he's making shot after shot after shot, they didn't care. They were just going to let him beat them, right? It's maybe the right move to do. But with what Zion was doing, okay, that's fine. Trey is just dishing it to Trey. Trey makes the threes, right? So all you're looking for these shooters to do is make teams pay for how they defend Zion Williamson. Trey Murphy does that, right? Herb Jones does that as well. He had a dagger of a 3 after not having really any points in the fourth quarter against the Philadelphia 76ers. And you felt good about that shot. Trey coming in off the bench is just another credible threat that is going to beat teams. Here was the beauty of what Trey was doing against the Atlanta Hawks. They knew to cover him. So we're going to put 2 guys on Zion Williamson, 1 guy on Trey Murphy. That's 3 defensive players committed to 2 guys. You know what that was doing? I don't know if this is a great defensive strategy for the opponent, but I will take it. That was leaving Brandon Ingram wide open. Brandon Ingram had acres of space in this game, and he was good in this game because the Atlanta Hawks just made it easy for him, right? Like, he had shots he could take. He didn't need it, but he had space to kind of drive, draw in a defender, kick the ball out, and they kept moving the ball around, and it led to the Pelicans having 32 assists in this game against the Atlanta Hawks. That is an excellent number for this team. Move the ball and good things happen. That's 5 more than they average per game this season. So Brandon had space to drive and attack, and when they rotated over again, someone was going to be open, and the ball often got back to Trey Murphy. So his shooting off the bench is it's an incredible weapon for him to have because he has good size. The dude's basically 6'10", right? He has all the tools you kind of want in a player like this, and he's using it here. So when teams wall off Zion, and now they're worried about Trey, someone's going to be open. Whether that was CJ making threes in the second half against the Atlanta Hawks, whether it's Herb Jones getting more space. My goodness, does Herb look good, right? We'll talk more about him in the next segment here, along with Najee Marshall, by the way. But Trey just being that weapon off the bench, another credible threat that teams are actively trying to kind of scheme out of existence here. Someone's going to be open, and now they're leaving Brandon Ingram open. Good luck. Good luck, opponents of the Pelicans, when that's happening. One of the things, though, with Trey, and you're seeing just more to his game. We talk about the three-point shooting. We focus on that because of how important it is. But he's added a lot more to his game that you weren't seeing earlier on in the year. For someone with size like his, he hasn't been a particularly amazing rebounder or even good rebounder in the NBA. But you look at Trey over these past 10 games, he's averaging essentially 6 rebounds per. That's up from a season average of 4.2. You're seeing more just aggressiveness from him, more hustle from him. Maybe that's due to him being more comfortable coming back from the injury that he had at the beginning of the season. Maybe that's him also just working on his game during the season. But you're seeing a much more multifaceted player that's doing more than just bombing away from 3 and making it. And if he was just doing that, we would be thrilled. But the fact that he's rebounding well too, and defensive rebounding at times has been a bit of a problem for New Orleans. I think that's important. That means you can play smaller with Larry Nance Jr. at the 5 instead of Jonas Valanciunas, which is what this team wants to do in general. You're also seeing more of an in-between game with him with the way that he's playing. I mentioned that he made 4 shots that weren't threes in this one, including an alley-oop from Zion, which was great. You need that from him, I think, right? Teams are going to start closing out on him. They've been closing out on him. And he has, an off-the-dribble game. He can put the ball down on the court and drive and attack the basket on a hard closeout. The thing with him with that is it's basically just a straight line and that's it. And one of the things you saw him struggle with earlier on in the year was when a defender just kind of went in his way. Okay, you close out tough on him on 3. He starts to drive towards the basket. You just have a defender slide on in, and it would often lead in a turnover or just a bad forced shot from Trey. There wasn't much of an in-between game there and didn't have, many moves in his bag. You're seeing him add a little bit more, a stop game to it, right? Where he can go up and put the ball up with a floater, a runner, little things like that are allowing him to impact the game at another level. So you throw that defender in the middle of the court and he can get by him. Now you're forcing another low man to rotate over, and that's just going to create tons of problems. Again, 32 assists in this because the defense for the Atlanta Hawks was constantly rotating, and that means as long as you move the ball, someone is going to be open. And it works really well. And this is why this team looks scary right now. Look, the Atlanta Hawks aren't great. The 76ers aren't great. The Raptors aren't great, but they're destroying these teams a little bit, right? They had a 15, 20-point lead in the first half against the Hawks. You had a 30-point lead against the Philadelphia 76ers. You blew out Toronto. All of that means that this team is playing well. Beating up on bad teams is something you're supposed to do. Doing it in dominant fashion, even if they get back into games a little bit, is okay. You're still building that lead in the first place, and that says something. Right? One of the things to also keep in mind with Trey is they're pairing him with Zion Williamson a lot. Willie Green is doing that, knowing that you need that shooter out there. It comes down to this, right? Pick your poison. Wall off Zion, leave Trey open. Cover Trey, but give Zion more room to work down low with how well he's playing, as we talked about in the first segment. And Zion, by the way, has added a lot to his game. You're seeing it. There's a lot more hesitation in his game, and that's a good thing. Kind of playing and surveying the court. It's almost like it's slowed down a little bit for him. But you're seeing him get down low, make a move, wait for a defender to do something, then make another move. Instead of just trying to kind of power through multiple contact. Okay, let's get guys off bounds. Then I can go up and put it in. He's doing everything you want. Play train with him, or Trey playing with him, there we go. It's just opening things up so much more, and it's one of the reasons why I think you're seeing excellent play from Zion and BI as well. Just been fun to watch. Also, Herb Jones needs to make the all-defensive first team, not second team, first team. Let's talk about his impact on that side of the ball, the shooting, the scoring as well. That's coming up here next because there's an incredible number they put on the broadcast that I was somewhat aware of, but it really jumps out at you when you see it. I'll tell you what that is. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn is a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, billion with a B, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easy and intuitive. You could post your job somewhere, but is it going to get out to the right people? Are you going to get candidates you wouldn't normally attract? LinkedIn Jobs is going to help you do it. And hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. And 2.5 million small businesses are using LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, and we're going to have a fun show for y'all tomorrow. Could the Pelicans get home court advantage in the first round? I think it's a possibility. We're going to dive into the numbers, look at the remaining schedule, look at teams like the Clippers, the Timberwolves, right? A week ago, I would have said there's no chance of this. It's not necessarily what I'm going to say in tomorrow's show. You don't want to miss it. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join almost 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. We are the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For your second listen, by the way, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. I don't need to say much else in this segment other than not on Herb. Like, not on Herb. The dude is incredible. This is a guy that is going to, that contract they signed him to this offseason is going to look like the biggest steal in the NBA. I promise you, in a year or two, you're going to hear national media. You're going to hear places, big name websites, other places like that. You're going to hear other Locked On shows. I promise you this, saying Herb Jones is on the best contract in the NBA. It's the best team-friendly contract in the NBA. Because you know what? With the way he's playing the game right now, the way he leads this team at times, it's absolutely true. Herb Jones, 11.3 points this season, 43.5% from three, on over 3.5 attempts per game. But here's the wild thing, right? We know that. We know his offensive game is expanded. He's also a very good off-ball cutter, right? He gets into the lane. He attacks the basket. He just does so many things. Like, his just impact in winning games is truly an incredible thing. He leads the team in fast break points. He's ahead of Zion Williamson. They put that on the broadcast. Antonio Daniels and Joe Myers were talking about it. I kind of knew this, but it's really incredible to kind of think about that and see that, right? He's not an offensive player. But then you think about all the steals he gets, where he just kind of rips the ball, it pokes the ball loose, then grabs it himself, gets a block, gets the ball, and runs down the court and goes. Defense to offense instantly, like that, right? Led to an easy dunk in the second half against the Atlanta Hawks. And what was great about that was he just put it in. No fanfare to it, no monster dunk. You saw the Pelicans bench kind of booing him after a steal where he dunked the ball because he didn't have flair behind it. Jose Alvarado immediately was out on the court giving 2 thumbs down. You had Matt Ryan being like, windmill it. It was really funny to see, and Herb was smiling because he knew that because he didn't throw it down in a crazy style, the bench was going to get up in there. One, I love that, which shows kind of the camaraderie camaraderie this team has, the chemistry. That I do think is a good thing. These guys truly love each other. Remember, an erroneous comment, let's call it, earlier on in the season from a guy who covers a real bad NBA team right now. It's like there's some weird chemistry issues going on with the Pelicans. No, there ain't. We can definitely say that unless you can't, get the tongue-in-cheek reference and the sarcasm that Jose Alvarado was throwing out there, because they were not actually booing Herb Jones. They were all having a lot of fun. That defense to offense is incredible. It's not just you get a steal. It's you get a steal and you get 2 easy points. So yeah, if everyone's getting all of these steals, but Herb is the one turning them into offensive possessions, that makes you a better defender, in my opinion. One of the most important things you can get in the NBA are live ball turnovers. There's a lot of guys who block shots, and then they swat the ball and it goes out of bounds and their opponent retains possession. Sure, that's valuable. Don't get me wrong. But you know what I like even more? When a guy blocks a shot and it goes right to a teammate or they get it themselves. Anthony Davis is very, very good at this, right? I know we don't really want to talk about him here on the show, but when he blocked shots in New Orleans, it would go to a teammate or he'd just corral it himself and then start a fast break. They don't retain possession. They are now at a disadvantage where you're running down the court with a man advantage. All of that really matters, and Herb Jones creates so much of that. DeJounte Murray had the clamps on him in this game, right? He was 7 for 20 in this game, 35%. He was a -5. 23 points on 20 shot attempts isn't that good. Herb, and 4 turnovers. Herb was killing him. Herb has shut down so many of these incredible players, and it just lets New Orleans do whatever it is they want and get easy offense, which makes their defense even better, right? We've talked about this a lot. If you're, a longtime listener or an everydayer of the show, your defense gets back, gets set, can then force another turnover. You race down the court, easy bucket, get back, get set, keep doing the thing. It's important to be able to get all of that, and it fuels this offense. It's why the Pelicans are one of 5 teams that are top 10 in terms of offensive rating and defensive rating. It's why their net rating is really good on the season. And if you haven't listened to the show of why that net rating stat is important, do it. We talked about it last week. That's an episode you do not want to miss. But Herb Jones is a massive part of that. What he's doing now, he needs to be. It will be a crime, in my opinion. We arrest everybody if Herb Jones doesn't make the all-defensive first team. The fact that he hasn't made one of the all-defensive teams at all in his career yet is mind-blowing to me. But this season, with the way you're seeing him shut players down, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, right? This game with Murray, we've seen him just do it to everybody, right? The fact that you're seeing him do it against these top players in the league, it's not second team we want to see him on. It's first team. He doesn't care about this. But we can promote it for him because it's the right thing to do and it's truthful. He deserves to be on that first team all defense. I love that the Pelicans are kind of rolling out a big PR campaign around this. They have the logo for it. It's great. Put that on t-shirts. People will buy them. Send those to voters. I guarantee you they will. They're going to do a big PR push, media push with this, and I think that's the right thing because Herb Jones deserves the recognition for how he's playing right now because he is fueling things. Dude looks like there's not 5 other defenders that are better than him in the NBA. There might not be 2, 3, right? Like he's in that conversation right now. And I think you're going to start to see him really get a lot of that big push as the Pelicans are winning, as their defense has been very good for 2 years now. And it starts with Herb Jones. And I love all of the players on the team saying like he should be doing it. Zion saying that, right? Trey saying that. Everybody talking about Herb Jones and how much they love him. Best contract in the NBA. Probably. I think so. There's someone else, let me know in the comments down below if there's like someone's contract I'm thinking of. But the fact that he makes like less than Austin Reeves, I think, or very similar, it's great for the Pelicans. He looks amazing right now. So does Najee Marshall. We'll talk about him a little bit more in tomorrow's show since we're running out of time here. But he deserves a lot of credit too for how he's been playing and pushing that bench unit with the Pelicans. More on that in tomorrow's show because I got a fun question that we're going to use as a jumping off point to talk about a lot of guys. Who'd win in a Pelicans battle royale? That was a great question. We'll talk about that in tomorrow's show, along with can the Pelicans make the 4th seed home court advantage crash that party? A week ago, I would have said no. I'm not saying no, at least not for sure anymore. That's coming up in tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans. But a great weekend, 2-0 for the Pelicans, 5th seed in the Western Conference. Zion looking good, Trey Murphy looking good, B.I. looking good. CJ McCollum making shots. All of it's looking good right now. This is a dangerous team. The NBA is going to be kind of keeping an eye on them. That is for sure. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. Thank you all so much for listening. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Be back tomorrow with that show. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Subscribe, become an everydayer. Tell a friend about the show as well. And I'll see you all next time.